He treated me like trash because I was cleaning, but I left him questioning his entire life. Have you ever been treated like you were invisible, as if your worth could be measured only by the broom in your hand or the uniform you wear? Imagine walking into a room where laughter echoes, glasses clink, and perfumes fill the air, only to be dismissed, mocked, or humiliated because you're there to clean. That was my reality on the night everything changed. He looked at me like I was dirt, as if my presence beneath the chandelier stained the marble floors more than the dust I swept. But what he didn't know was that life has a way of flipping the script, of turning mockery into memory, and silence into strength. Sometimes the smallest act, the quietest word, can echo louder than arrogance. If you're watching this now, don't just listen, feel it. Because maybe you've been there too, pushed aside, underestimated, treated as less. If you have, hit like on this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories like this. You'll see that the ending isn't always what the powerful expect. The first time I met Mr. Harrington, I was carrying a mop bucket into the ballroom of his hotel. He was tall, dressed in a black suit that screamed money, his watch glittering under the lights. Beside him was his daughter Amelia and his business partner Charles. My job was simple, clean the hall after the party. But to him, my presence was an interruption. "Why is she here while we're still discussing business?" he said loudly, pointing at me as if I were a stain. The room fell silent, and then laughter. Even Amelia chuckled nervously, though her eyes hinted at discomfort. Charles smirked, sipping his whiskey. I lowered my head, continued mopping, swallowing the heat of humiliation. "People like that should stay invisible," Harrington added, not caring that I heard every word. My heart burned, but I kept quiet. The silence of someone planning is more powerful than the shout of someone commanding. Days passed, but his words lingered. Every swipe of my mop felt like an echo of that night. At home, my mother noticed my silence. "Elena," she said softly, "don't let another person's blindness make you forget your own worth. You've always been more than a job." My younger brother Matteo added, "One day they'll see who you really are, and they'll regret it." Their faith was fuel when my dignity wavered. 1 week later, fate twisted. The hotel announced a charity gala, and volunteers were needed for coordination. I signed up, not as a cleaner, but as an assistant for guest management. Amelia, the daughter, recognized me immediately. "You're the cleaner, right?" she asked, a mix of surprise and awkwardness in her voice. "Yes," I said firmly, meeting her eyes, "but tonight I'm part of the team making this event happen." Something in her shifted. Maybe guilt, maybe respect. During the gala, Harrington walked in, confident as ever. His eyes locked on me and narrowed. "What is she doing here?" he barked. Amelia stepped forward, her voice steady. "She's with us, Father. She's part of the event staff tonight." He scoffed, muttering, "Once a cleaner, always a cleaner." But Charles raised a brow, intrigued. "Don't underestimate people, Harrington. Life has a way of surprising you." And surprise it did. Midway through the gala, a speaker cancelled. The microphone was handed to me unexpectedly to introduce a segment I had prepared for in case something went wrong. My voice trembled at first, but then steadied, flowing with passion. I spoke about dignity, about how the value of a person isn't tied to what they do, but who they are. The audience grew silent, every ear tuned, every eye on me. Even Harrington stopped frowning. Amelia whispered to Charles, "She's incredible." The applause that followed wasn't polite, it was thunderous, and as I stepped off stage, I caught Harrington's eyes. For the first time he looked unsure, his arrogance cracked. He wasn't staring at a cleaner anymore. He was staring at a mirror, reflecting his cruelty back at him. After the gala, whispers followed me like shadows. Guests who had once walked past me without a glance now approached with handshakes and smiles. "Your words were powerful," one woman said, gripping my hand tightly. I needed that reminder tonight. Another man added, "You spoke like someone who's lived through storms and come out stronger." Their validation warmed me, but I remembered my mother's voice. Don't let praise blind you the same way insults tried to bury you. Still, deep inside, I felt a shift. For once, I wasn't invisible. For once, the broom didn't define me. If you've ever had a moment where you proved someone wrong simply by standing tall, comment below. Share your story, because sometimes your survival itself is a testimony. Yet Harrington was not convinced. Days later, as I was leaving the hotel, he intercepted me in the corridor. "Enjoy the attention while it lasts," he sneered. "People forget quickly. At the end of the day, you'll always go back to cleaning floors." His words hit like cold water, but instead of anger, I felt clarity. "Maybe," I replied calmly, "but dignity isn't a costume you take off at work. It stays with you, even when others can't see it." He froze for a second, his jaw tightening, then stormed off. I realized then, men like him are not strong. They are terrified of mirrors that show their emptiness. At home, my brother Matteo beamed. "You were on social media. Someone recorded your speech. People are sharing it." He handed me his phone. Comments flooded the screen. "She speaks truth, a voice of courage from the unseen. Respect to her." I couldn't believe it. Strangers resonated with my pain turned into words. For the first time, I felt that maybe my silence all these years had been preparing me for this one echo. Meanwhile, Amelia began approaching me differently. One afternoon, she found me in the hotel lounge. "I want to apologize," she said softly. "I laughed that night when my father mocked you. It was wrong. You deserve better." Her sincerity surprised me. I nodded, accepting. We all learn when life forces us to see what's real. That was the start of an unlikely friendship. She began confiding in me, how suffocating her father's expectations were, how she longed to choose her own path. It was strange, the daughter of the man who humiliated me now seeking my counsel, but maybe that's how redemption begins, not with revenge, but with recognition. Charles, the business partner, also changed. One evening after a late meeting, he stopped me. "You have something Harrington doesn't. Authenticity. Don't waste it. People are drawn to truth more than titles." His words lingered with me. Was fate nudging me towards something bigger than mops and buckets? But Harrington, he grew restless. The more people praised me, the more unsettled he became. One evening I overheard him arguing with Charles. "You're letting her distract everyone. She's nothing more than staff." Charles's reply was calm but sharp. "No, Harrington, she's what you've forgotten to be. Human." That sentence pierced him like a blade, and I knew his world was beginning to shake. And then came the breaking point. During a board dinner, Amelia insisted I join at the table, not just to serve, but to contribute. Harrington nearly exploded. "This is absurd," he roared. "What's next? Making her a partner?" But before anyone could respond, one of the investors spoke up. "Maybe you should listen to her. She understands people more than you do. That's what leadership is about." The room fell silent, and for the first time, Harrington had no retort. His empire of arrogance was crumbling, not by my hand, but by the weight of his own blindness. The night ended with him leaving early, shoulders heavy, face pale. I sat quietly, a storm of emotions inside me. Not triumph, not vengeance, just the quiet power of knowing that dignity cannot be erased. Who knows, maybe that night he started questioning himself. But one thing was certain, the world around him was already questioning him. The following weeks unfolded like a tide turning in silence, slowly but irresistibly. My life was still filled with long hours and modest pay, but something inside had changed. The girl who once bent her head to avoid stares now walked with her chin lifted, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. People around the hotel began treating me differently. Staff who had once overlooked me now greeted me with genuine respect. Guests nodded politely when I passed. Even small gestures, like someone holding the door open, felt like affirmations that the speech I gave had shifted something beyond myself. If you're watching this, take a second to like this video and share it with someone who has been underestimated. Because sometimes, one spark of dignity can ignite a fire that burns through years of invisibility. Amelia became more of a companion than an acquaintance. She would sit with me during breaks, her expensive heels tapping nervously against the marble floor as she confessed truths that weighed on her. "Elena, I don't want to live the life my father has mapped out for me," she whispered one evening. "He wants me to marry into wealth, manage the business, live in golden cages. But when you spoke at the gala, it was like you were speaking to me, about being more than what others label you." Her vulnerability struck me. We were from different worlds, yet both were bound by expectations we didn't choose. "Amelia," I told her, "your cage is gilded, mine is iron, but both are cages. The key is inside you. You just need the courage to use it." Tears welled in her eyes. For once, she wasn't the daughter of Harrington the tycoon. She was just a young woman searching for her own identity. Meanwhile, Charles observed quietly, almost studying me. One late evening, he approached me outside the hotel entrance. The night air was cool, and the city lights reflected in his glasses. "Elena," he said, "I've been thinking. Harrington's obsession with power has blinded him, and people are starting to notice. Investors, staff, even his own daughter. But your voice brought something he can't buy. Hope, truth, authenticity. Have you ever thought of doing more than this?" His question startled me. "More?" I asked. "Like what?" He gave a thin smile. "Public speaking, community work, leadership maybe. Whatever you choose, people will listen to you now." His words were seeds planted in soil I never thought I owned. I went home that night unable to sleep, wondering if life was nudging me into a path I'd never dared to imagine. But Harrington was unraveling. His pride couldn't withstand the way attention drifted from him to me, even in whispers. He lashed out at staff more frequently, his temper erupting in meetings. One afternoon I overheard him shout at Charles, "She is making me look weak. A cleaner. Do you understand how ridiculous that is?" Charles's reply was calm, but devastating. "You don't need her to make you look weak, Harrington. You're doing that all by yourself." That night, I caught a glimpse of Harrington in the lobby, sitting alone, his glass of scotch untouched. His eyes, once sharp with arrogance, now seemed clouded with doubt. For the first time, he looked less like a lion and more like a man who had built his throne on sand. At home, my mother smiled as she watched me tell Matteo about the changes. "You see," she said, "respect doesn't come from titles. It comes from how you carry yourself when no one believes in you." Matteo grinned, adding, "One day, Elena, he'll regret every word he ever threw at you." I wondered if that day was already creeping closer. The turning point came when Harrington was asked to give a speech at another charity event. He prepared with his usual pomp, but when he spoke, the audience shifted uncomfortably. His words sounded hollow, rehearsed, lacking soul. Then the organizer asked if I would say a few words unplanned. My heart pounded, but I stood up, and just like before, I spoke not from notes but from scars. I talked about how the worth of a person isn't written in suits or swept away with brooms. The silence was thick, every word hanging heavy in the air. When I finished, the applause drowned the hall. Harrington's face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he sat back down. In that moment, it wasn't me who looked small. It was him. The whispers turned louder after that night. "Maybe Harrington's time is fading," one investor murmured. "The girl, she speaks like a leader," another said. Harrington left abruptly, anger concealed poorly behind a forced smile. That evening, I realized, his empire was not collapsing because of me. It was collapsing because he had built it on contempt. and contempt always eats its master first. After that second speech, the air around me carried a strange weight. People who once brushed past me now stopped to ask for advice, or simply to thank me for reminding them of something they had forgotten, that humanity matters more than status. I wasn't chasing fame or attention, but it felt as though life had pulled me onto a stage I never asked for. At the hotel, whispers turned into recognition. I caught employees saying, "She's different. She's changing things." Meanwhile, Harrington's grip on his empire seemed to loosen with every passing day. His once commanding voice grew brittle. His authority questioned not because I fought him, but because he was fighting shadows of his own arrogance. If you've ever witnessed someone powerful crumble under the weight of their own pride, hit like on this video and subscribe for more stories like this, because what happened next will show you that dignity always finds its way to the surface. Amelia's connection with me deepened. One afternoon, she invited me to her home, far removed from the cold walls of the hotel. "I want you to see the truth," she said quietly, as we entered the sprawling mansion. Her room was filled not with diamonds and designer dresses, but with sketchbooks and paints. "This is who I am," she admitted, "but my father would never approve. To him, art is weakness, not business." She handed me a canvas with a half-finished portrait. It was of me, mop in hand, but standing tall. My throat tightened. "Amelia, you saw me." She nodded. "I did. That night at the gala when you spoke, it was like you were painting my own soul with words." In that moment, we weren't Cleaner and Heiress. We were two women trapped in cages built by different hands. Charles, too, seemed to step closer. He had always been Harrington's shadow, but now he leaned into truth rather than power. One evening, after a late board meeting, he approached me. "Elena," he began, "I've decided something. If Harrington won't listen, others will. Investors are questioning his leadership. They've started looking at alternatives, and believe it or not, your name comes up often." I laughed nervously. "Me? I'm not qualified for that." He shook his head. "Qualification is not a piece of paper. It's the ability to inspire trust, and you do it naturally. Don't underestimate that." His words rattled inside me long after he left. Could someone like me truly step into such a space? Meanwhile, Harrington unraveled faster. He barked at staff, alienated partners, and refused to see how his arrogance poisoned everything he touched. One evening, I was cleaning a side corridor when I heard his voice break, not in anger, but in something closer to desperation. "They're slipping away, Charles," he muttered. "They're turning against me." Charles's reply was soft, yet sharp as glass. "They're not turning against you, Harrington. You've been pushing them away for years. Elena just opened their eyes." Silence followed, heavy and bitter. A week later, another event sealed his fate. Harrington was supposed to present a new project to investors, but halfway through his words faltered. His confidence was gone. His eyes darted nervously, his sentences collapsing into fragments. The room grew restless. And then, almost instinctively, the organizer turned to me. "Elena, would you like to share a few words?" The request was unexpected, yet undeniable. My hands trembled, but my voice carried. I spoke of integrity, of how businesses must be built on respect, not exploitation. I spoke of how every person matters, whether they sit at the table or clean beneath it. The silence that followed was electric, and when the applause erupted, it was not polite, it was explosive. Investors rose to their feet, and in the corner, Harrington sat hunched, his face pale, his hands covering his mouth. Afterward, Amelia hugged me tightly. "You don't even realize what you've done, do you? You've broken his illusion. Everyone sees now." Charles simply nodded. Sometimes Harrington, the man who thought he owned the room, forgets that the room listens to the one who speaks with truth. That night, as I walked home, the city lights shimmered differently. My brother Matteo ran up to me, holding out his phone. "Look!" he exclaimed. My speech was trending again, shared across platforms. People were calling me an inspiration, a symbol of resilience. Tears welled in my eyes, not from pride, but from the overwhelming sense that my silence had finally turned into a roar. And Harrington? He began to disappear, not because I fought him, but because he couldn't fight himself anymore. Harrington's downfall was not a dramatic collapse, but a slow erosion, like cliffs crumbling under constant waves. Each day, his arrogance chipped away at him, leaving behind a man who once commanded fear, but now inspired pity. Employees no longer scurried at his barked orders. Investors avoided his calls. Even the hotel staff whispered, "He's not the same anymore." And through it all, I remained steady, working, speaking, living with the same quiet dignity I always carried. Because true strength is not in shouting louder, but in standing firm when others expect you to bow. If this resonates with you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs courage today, and subscribe for more stories like this. Amelia grew bolder in defying her father. One evening, she invited me to a dinner with a few friends from the art community. I hesitated, still wearing the shadows of my uniform, but she insisted. "You belong here," she told me. The dinner was filled with laughter, sketches exchanged, and dreams shared openly. For once I wasn't the outsider. I was part of something vibrant and real. Afterward, Amelia walked me home. "You've given me strength to pursue what I love," she said softly. "If you can stand tall under his cruelty, I can stand tall against his expectations." Her hand squeezed mine, and I realized I wasn't just healing myself. I was helping others break free too. Charles continued to act like a quiet guardian. He saw the shifting tides and used them wisely. "Elena," he said one evening, "Harrington's investors have been asking questions about values, leadership, humanity. They see in you what they don't see in him anymore. Don't be surprised if opportunities find you soon." I shook my head, laughing nervously. "I'm just a cleaner who happened to speak." His eyes glimmered. "No, you're a voice in a world starving for truth, and voices like yours don't stay hidden for long." His conviction shook me, because deep down I feared he was right. But Harrington himself was drowning in his own pride. I saw it in the way he stared blankly into glasses of untouched whiskey, in the way his steps dragged across the lobby. One late night, I found him alone in the ballroom where it had all begun. The same chandeliers glittered above, but he looked smaller now, his shoulders hunched, his eyes tired. He didn't notice me at first, but when he did, his face flushed with shame and anger. "You," he muttered bitterly, "you took everything from me." I stood there quietly, then said, "I took nothing. You gave it away. Piece by piece, by treating people like they were less than you." He flinched as if struck. I didn't linger. I simply turned and walked away, leaving him with the echo of his own choices. At home, my mother watched me carefully. "Elena, sometimes life tests us by placing cruelty in our path, not to break us, but to reveal us. Look at you. You've become more than even you imagined." Matteo chimed in, eyes wide with pride. "You're becoming famous, Elena, but not for being rich or flashy, famous for being real." Their words grounded me, reminding me that even as the world shifted around me, my roots remained in love and truth. The true turning point came when Harrington's board decided to strip him of several responsibilities. Whispers of replacing him began to swirl. Investors openly suggested that leadership should reflect values, not just profits. And astonishingly, one of them mentioned my name. I wasn't in the room, but Charles later told me, "They see you as a symbol, Elena. Maybe not a CEO, but someone who represents what leadership should feel like." The thought overwhelmed me. Could a cleaner truly become the face of change in a world built on hierarchy? Meanwhile, Harrington grew bitterer, snapping at Amelia, pushing Charles away, isolating himself. The man who once sneered, "People like that should stay invisible," was now invisible in the eyes of those who once revered him. And that was the most poetic justice of all. But fate wasn't done yet. A final moment was waiting, one that would bring every truth crashing down like a storm. The storm came on the night of the annual investor banquet, a glittering event meant to showcase Harrington's strength. He walked in dressed sharply, but there was a tremor in his hands, a nervous flicker in his eyes that no tailored suit could hide. The room no longer belonged to him. It was filled with investors, employees, and guests who had all begun to whisper a different name. My name. I was only supposed to help coordinate, but once again, destiny had other plans. Halfway through Harrington's speech, his words stumbled, his rehearsed confidence collapsing into awkward silence. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Then from the back, a voice rang out, "Let her speak." Heads turned toward me. The organizer gestured nervously, but the demand grew louder. "Let Elena speak." Harrington's face burned red. "This is absurd," he barked. But the pressure was undeniable, and the microphone was handed to me. My palms were sweating, my heart racing, but I stepped forward. The room quieted. "I wasn't meant to stand here tonight," I began, my voice steadying as I continued. "But perhaps that's the point. Sometimes those who aren't expected to speak are the ones who must. Because leadership isn't about titles or money. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching." I shared my story without bitterness, without vengeance. I spoke about being humiliated, about feeling invisible, about finding strength in silence. I reminded them that a business, like a family, collapses without respect. I ended with words that poured straight from my heart. Who we are in the dark is who we truly are, and no empire can stand if it's built on contempt. When I finished, the applause was deafening. People rose to their feet, clapping not politely but passionately, some even with tears in their eyes. Harrington stood frozen, his jaw tight, his eyes glistening with something that looked like shame or fear. Charles leaned toward him and whispered something I could almost hear. "The room doesn't belong to you anymore." Amelia walked up and hugged me in front of everyone. "This is the voice we should be listening to," she declared. The crowd agreed, and in that moment, Harrington's empire cracked beyond repair. Later that night, as I was leaving, Harrington stopped me in the corridor. His voice was hoarse, almost broken. How did you do it? How did you turn everyone against me?" I looked him in the eyes and answered quietly, "I didn't turn them. You pushed them away yourself. I just reminded them of what they already knew." He staggered back, the weight of truth heavier than any insult he had ever thrown. That was the night he stopped being a lion and became just a man facing the ruins of his pride. At home, Matteo could barely contain his excitement. "Elena, you're everywhere. People are calling you the voice of the unseen. Do you realize what's happening?" My mother simply held my face in her hands and said, "Child, sometimes God lets others throw dirt on you so he can show the world that you are a seed." Her words settled in my soul like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, but the true twist of fate had not yet revealed itself. Life was preparing one last revelation, one that would tie everything together in a way none of us could have imagined. The final revelation came like lightning on a clear night, unexpected, blinding, impossible to ignore. A few weeks after the banquet, the hotel board announced a restructuring. Harrington was quietly removed from several leadership positions, his influence reduced to almost nothing. Rumors spread quickly. He had lost investor trust, and even his partners were distancing themselves. But the most shocking twist came when Charles requested a private meeting with me. We sat in the quiet of the hotel's old library, the dust of forgotten books surrounding us. His tone was calm but serious. "Elena, I've kept something from you. Harrington doesn't just know you as the cleaner. He knows your family." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Charles sighed. "Years ago, before you worked here, your father applied for a job in this very hotel. He was turned away by Harrington, not because he wasn't qualified, but because Harrington said people like that don't belong here. He carried the same contempt then that he carries now. And when you walked in years later, carrying that mop, Harrington recognized the name, but never connected the dignity with the bloodline he had once dismissed." My breath caught. The insult Harrington had thrown at me had once been thrown at my father, a man who had passed away believing he wasn't enough. The weight of that truth burned inside me. Later, I confronted Harrington, not with anger but with quiet resolve. I found him alone in the ballroom again, his empire now reduced to silence. "You knew my father," I said. He looked up, startled. His face paled as memories surfaced. I remember," he admitted. "He came here, desperate. I turned him away." His voice cracked. "I never thought it would matter." I steadied myself and replied, "It mattered to him. It mattered to us. And maybe all this, your fall, my rise, wasn't just about me. Maybe it was life's way of showing you that every person you dismiss is a soul with worth, with dreams, with family." He bowed his head, tears glistening in his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't the cruel tycoon. He was a broken man haunted by his own choices. Amelia entered then, her eyes firm, her voice strong. "Father, this is the mirror you've refused to face. You taught me to value money over humanity, but Elena taught me to value truth over pride. And I choose her lesson." Harrington looked at her, devastated, as if realizing he had lost more than power. He had lost the respect of his own daughter. That night, I walked home with Matteo by my side. "So he finally knows," my brother whispered. "Yes," I said, my voice heavy with both sorrow and release. "He finally knows." My mother was waiting, and when I told her, she simply nodded. "The world has a way of correcting itself, child. Who digs holes for others often falls into them first." Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a leadership conference, not as a cleaner, not as staff, but as a guest of honor. I stood on that stage, remembering every mop, every insult, every silent night of doubt. And I ended with the lesson that life had carved into my soul. Sometimes the contempt of today is only the prelude to tomorrow's reverence. Dignity may be invisible, but it always leaves a mark. The applause was overwhelming, but the true victory was quiet. The knowledge that my father's rejection had become my redemption, and Harrington's pride had become his prison. The villain fell not because I pushed him, but because he tripped on the very contempt he used to climb. And so, the story closed, not with revenge, but with justice, not with cruelty, but with truth. Like I said before, the silence of someone who plans is more powerful than the scream of someone who commands, and sometimes the person treated like trash becomes the mirror that forces the world to see itself clearly. If this story touched you, like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more stories of strength and redemption. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, only to prove them wrong? Because sometimes the trash someone throws away becomes the seed that grows into a tree they can never cut down.